Hi, my name is Saptarshi and I welcome you to this new CodeGeeks video on custom authorizer for AWS API Gateway. In this video, the agenda would be something like this. First, we are going to be relying on the existing Cognito user pool to develop one API Gateway authorizer. And this API Gateway authorizer would basically be attached to a root API Gateway. Next, we are going to be defining the root API Gateway for the project to which we are going to attach the API Gateway authorizer. And finally, when all of this is done, we will verify and test that our APIs are secure. So the approach is going to be something like this. We start with the existing Cognito user pool, which we built on episode 8. And then, based on this Cognito user pool, a new custom authorizer would be written. Okay. Also, as this authorizer is going to be written, we are going to associate the authorizer to a root API gateway, which is something we are also going to be developing during this video. So let me reveal the final version of the serverless.yaml file that we will be building. So if we see the mapping, the Cognito user pool on the left is going to be mapped to the serverless.yaml file by defining through line number 15. And when we talk about the custom authorizer, that would be basically defined by the api-authorizer.yaml file on line number 17 and the root API gateway on line number 16 by defining a new function or a new file called api-main.yaml. And once everything is developed, what we intend is basically to have our /nodes resource to be authorized by Cognito user pools. And all the fun begins by writing the root API, or we call it the main API. So I move over to serverless.yaml file, and then here I'll be declaring a call to a new file by using the serverless file function, and I say file./resources, where I'm going to be defining the api-main.yaml. So this api-main is going to contain the definition for our root API for the project. So let's go over to the resources directory and create the file and also write resources. Now we name the resource to be something like API call. And after declaring the resource, we are going to define or declare type and properties for this resource. Now, once both of them are defined, we will be writing the outputs section. And I hope that you are already familiar of the resource block because we have done this so many times. Perfect. So now we are going to be defining the output section, and on the output section, the first thing that we need is the API ID for our API call. So we say a resource API ID API call, and we define the description, the value, followed by the export. Now this is the general structure when we are using CloudFormation to define our outputs, and with this we are going to be defining another outputs which we call API root ID for API call. Now quickly define the type for our resource, which is AWS API Gateway and then REST API. And after that I will define the properties, having the first one is name. So I would say name, and the name property is going to be very essential, and we start by writing API followed by the stage, which we have defined as a variable within our provider section. So we'd say self.provider.stage, and then we will take the API name as another variable declared within our serverless file. So the name is defined. Now we move over to quickly write the description for our API ID. So we would say API ID, and the value is also important. The value is going to be a reference to the API call resource that we have defined just above. So I just copy and paste and define the description for our API root ID. Now after this, export should have a name, so I would say name, and the name is going to be very similar to what we have written the name for our API call. So I would say API, and then I would say name followed by stage. So I would again copy the stage section, and it's here. So the stage section is copied, and after this I will just append API ID. Okay, the similar would be written as well for the root API ID. So I would say name and paste what was above followed by API root ID. So this defines our API main.yaml. So okay, I forgot to add the value for the root API ID, so I would say function get att, and here I need to append first of all the resource and then the property that we want out of this resource, which is root resource ID. So I would say root resource ID, and this completes the definition for our API main.yaml. However, I see a few typos, so get att, and also self has to be, there has to be a colon after self, and I need to modify this in every places so far. Okay, I do this, I will do here as well, and also the last one. So now it seems pretty much complete. So let's have a look. The first section defines the resource for our root API, and then the first output of API ID here, and this section defines the root ID. Now we will go back to our serverless file and start writing the definitions for our API authorizer for the root API gateway that we just wrote. So here in the beginning we will again write a declaration of another file. So let's say file./resources and then API authorizer.yaml. So this API authorizer.yaml basically contains the declaration for our custom authorizer. So first we are going to be creating the resource by writing a new file and then declaring resources. After that we will write API Gateway Authorizer as the name of our resource, and this name basically creates a new resource by the name API Gateway Authorizer. That's right. And next is a very important section wherein we write a dependency to the API Gateway, because without having the API Gateway created, it doesn't make sense that we go ahead and create a authorizer for the API Gateway. So we do that by writing depends on the stack. So depends on the API call is written, and then I will define other important properties like type and properties, and the type is going to be AWS API Gateway and then authorizer, because we are defining an authorizer. Now properties has important child elements. So the first important child element is authorizer result TTL in seconds, and then the identity source, and followed by the REST API ID, which is in our case going to be a reference to the API call, and then type, and also the name. And finally the most important one, or is another important one, to point to the Cognito user pool, which is provider ARN. So I quickly modify the typo authorizer result TTL in seconds, which is 300. So that's fine. The identity source is a big one, so I'd have to say method dot request dot header. So I would say dot header dot authorization, and then the REST API ID essentially is going to be the reference to our API call. Okay, the type is going to be Cognito underscore user underscore pools. This is what we see, and the name. So I would choose the name to be something like authorizer, doesn't create any problem. The provider ARN is something that is going to be FN, import value. Now if an import value comes, because this is going to read output from another stack, and the value would be user pool ARN, which means that there should be another stack outputting user pool ARN, and we're going to be doing that in the cognito user pool.yaml file later on. Okay, before moving to the output section, first I will rectify the typos. So for example, there it has to be ref and authorization here instead of authorizer, so say authorization, and that's all. Okay, so now I should be moving to the next section wherein I would write the outputs for the authorizer. Now outputs for the authorizer is important because we are going to be referring by the export name that we write here. So I would name the outputs to be something like authorizer ID, and it has to have a description, again after that a value, and followed by an export. So let me first define the description. So description would be something like authorizer for authorizer for API calls or call, and the value should be again a reference to the API gateway authorizer that we just defined here. Excuse me. So that is there, and then export name is something by which we are going to be referring to this API gateway authorizer. So I would say something like auth followed by stage followed by API name. So I would say self provider dot API name. Let me copy the text. So it is API name, exactly how I was thinking. So I'll paste it, and then finally authorizer. So I would say hyphen authorizer. So these, okay, it has to be shifted left. So I will select the whole output and shift it left because it has to be on the same level where the resource is written. These indentations are correct. So it almost completes the declaration of our API authorizer.yaml. Okay, looks good to me. So let's move over to the next section. Okay, in this section what we are going to do is basically write the definition for this import value. Now import value means that we have to write in another section on the outputs to match the user pool ARN. So I would say user pool ARN, and then quickly fill in the value, the description, and followed by the export name. Now the export name has to match with the same name that we used in the import value section. So I paste user pool ARN. Quickly I would now update the description, something like user pool ARN. That's okay. Now the value is going to be the same as we see on the right side. So it has to match this particular format. So as I'm highlighting on the screen, this is the format that we need. So I would start with join, and then I would say empty string because we need a string, and then on the next line I would copy ARN. So I would say a double quoted string and then copy from the page. So I would copy until IDP colon. So here I'm going to paste this. Then the next part would be the region. So region we will get from AWS region. So I would say ref to AWS region. Then I need a colon. So I would say quoted double quote colon. And after that I need the account ID. So I would say hyphen ref and then AWS double colon account ID. And now again I would have to place colon followed by user pool // So I'll first copy colon. I can copy the colon from line number 117. Okay, now I can say user pool // I would say another string has just the // and after that user pool ID. Now user pool ID is basically the reference to the Cognito user pool that we have built. So I would copy from the top my name of the resource. So I would say Cognito, copy the Cognito user pool, and this should be fine. So that is done. So now this completes the declaration for the user pool ARN. Okay, now the export should be available, and right now I can go ahead and save and then verify my deployment. Okay, now we are in the backend stack. I quickly verify the current directory where I have the serverless.yaml file, so I can now trigger the SLS deploy command. I will hit enter SLS deploy, and this will try to create the stack or update the stack again. I see an immediate rollback which says that the user pool ARN doesn't exist. So I need to check the Cognito user pool if my changes were saved. Okay, I see the changes were saved. So what I doubt is that even after these changes were there, it didn't reflect. So I'm gonna comment the next two files and just run SLS deploy with the Cognito user pool to verify if just having this updates the current stack or not. It's update in progress now. I will check in the complete section. I can see that backend dev is now update complete. Verifying the outputs, I can see that user pool ARN was created. So we are good now to run the later two parts, which is the API main and authorizer. If I uncomment them and run the SLS deploy command again, it should rerun and I should see update in progress here. Okay, it's update in progress. Now with these events, I can see that root API call was triggered, and if the stack is complete, if the stack successfully completes, that's something what I can see on my terminal. I believe the stack has finished. So now if I go to the resources, I can see, okay, yes, the API Gateway authorizer was created and the logical ID and type confirms the same. So in the next part, we will be integrating this API Gateway authorizer to the events.yml of our API project. Let's recap what we have learned in this episode. First, we updated our serverless.yaml file and updated the Cognito user pool.yaml to hold the new definitions, and then we created a custom authorizer that we defined on line number 17, and after that we created a new API gateway, which is the root API gateway, and we did that on line number 16. So this is entirely what we covered in episode 11. In the next episode, we are going to be securing the nodes API by attaching the authorizer of Cognito users pool. So if you are interested, stay tuned.